Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Plot Genie. I am Heather, and I'm actually really, I don't know if excited is the right word for this topic, but it's kind of a question that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And it's not so much that I've wrestled with it, but more like I've given a lot of consideration to it. So, what am I talking about? Can you be a Christian and write dark romance? Now, before we get into depth in this video, I just want to say that I'm going to share a lot of personal beliefs and thoughts, and this is just from my personal experience. I'm in no way trying to isolate or shame or make anyone feel bad for whatever they're doing or writing in their own career, because spoiler alert, I do think that you can be. I think the themes in dark romance are actually really poignant within Christianity. And this is coming from someone who is reading the Bible and studying the Bible um, almost on a daily basis. So I do want to get into it. Um, Having said all of that, I kind of want to share a lot of where I'm coming from and why I even am thinking about this in the first place, because I've done my own sort of research on YouTube and I haven't really found a lot of people talking about it. And I just decided that I was going to share my personal journey and my personal realizations, and in hopes that, maybe you feel the same or maybe you feel different, and that's totally fine. So, really quick, I wrote a series, the Slapshot series from like 2017. I think the last one that I published was 2022, maybe 2023. I can't, no, it was 2023. I think it was March 2023, and that was the last book in the series. And that was very much like a rom-com NHL sort of series. So with this series that I just finished up this year, I decided at the end of 2023 I was going to do a dark romance series. I was going to do college because I hadn't done college hockey before, and that was kind of the challenge of keeping things fresh. And I had done a lot of research, a lot of tropes, and I was really excited to get into it. And what's interesting is I think that we can all agree that as we get further along into our author journey, if we're writing on a consistent level, our craft should improve, whether we're reading new craft books or we're just writing and we're just reading in general, right? We should be getting better. And I felt like if we just compare the two hockey series from a craft level, the Crestwood series is better, a better written series than the Slapshot series. But what's interesting is the reviews that I have for the series are actually much better for the Slapshot series than they are for the Crestwood series. And I'm not saying they're terrible reviews. And when I actually read the reviews, I figured out why that is. So, what's interesting about being a dark romance author that I didn't realize until I started publishing within the genre is there every reader has a very different definition of what dark romance is. So some might say, this is way too dark for me. I'm going to give you a 1 star. And others will say, this isn't dark enough. I'm going to give you a 1 star. The reviews, the lower, like the low star reviews that I was getting, it wasn't because the story was bad. It wasn't because it was like there's no editing done or whatever. It was literally because of that. There wasn't enough steam or there was too much steam. And I realized being a dark romance author, you have to really figure out the brand that you want to put out there, because everyone has a different definition of what dark means to them, right? Whereas if you're writing a romantic comedy, the expectation is that it's going to be funny and romantic, and we pretty much have an idea of what that means. Now, the definition of comedy might be different for everybody, but we can all look at a scenario and be like, that's a funny scenario, even if I don't actually laugh from it, right? Whereas something dark, to me, might be something that's child's play to somebody else, or it might be super, super dark to somebody else, right? And it's what I've learned being in a lot of these Facebook groups with these readers. I feel like there is a special nuance to dark romance authors because there is this requirement. It's almost like this unwritten requirement that you have to top yourself constantly. I feel like there is an expectation of spice in every single book. And it's not so much spice itself, but the amount of it. And on top of it, and again, this isn't to shame any authors, I found that sometimes the spice isn't even written well. It's like rushed. It's like a 500 word scene. It's just the scenario is something that is more shock value than it's actually relevant to the story. I'm not saying all dark romance authors. I know I'm probably gonna get hate, but I have to say it. I feel like there's so much potential within this sphere, but people aren't trying to actually, let me caveat. There is a small group of people that aren't actually trying to write good stories. They're just trying to shock the readers, and by shock, I mean essentially get them to a very satisfied position, right? It's your book is essentially a tool for them to get satisfied, if you get what I'm saying. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that in and of itself. But I realized that I didn't want to write that story. I've always, always, always liked slow burn. I've always liked the buildup. Fallout's coming out in a couple of months. And if you don't know, I'm obsessed with that. I have a podcast with my friend Chelsea, and we dissect everything. But I realize in terms of dark romance, I did not, as an author, want to play the game of how can I shock people? What can I introduce into this thing? Because my characters aren't being fleshed out. If anything, I'm trying to force them into scenarios where they are going to, get intimate, and it's not actually going to serve the story. It's utilized to get the reader into a certain frame of mind. I've seen readers in Facebook groups basically say, I'm 10% in this book. I'm about to DNF because there's no spice. Does it get better? I've seen, and that's fine. If that's what they're looking for, like there's obviously a want for that. And I am in no way saying don't offer it or whatever. I'm just talking about my own realization having written this 12 book series. And I think at the same time, I would say, I'm trying to think, I would say around the end of writing the series and just kind of like I mentioned, being in the groups and just sort of seeing the reviews, I realized that I did not want to capitulate to how can I play these games with these readers and leave them satisfied. My focus has always been the story and the characters. Now, yes, are situations sometimes dark in what I write? Absolutely. Is there spice? Most of the time, yes. I started last year, I think, around the time that I was winding down this dark series to be like, I want to do no spice, just Christmas, small town. Like, I needed that break from the darkness. You know what I mean? Um, but one of the reasons I love this genre is because it allows me to freely work through certain things that might seem taboo or forbidden. Like one of my favorite tropes is forbidden romance. One of my favorite tropes is age gap or power imbalance, things like that. And I have found that I really, really like going in depth and understanding the characters who are in that position, right? So, in terms of where I was struggling with my faith is in I was raised a Christian, but not so much that we were a Christian household. Like obviously we celebrated Easter and Christmas. We believed in Jesus, believed that Jesus is the Christ, right? Is the Messiah. But we weren't very day to day. We once, like I went to Sunday school when I was in elementary school, and then once my grandparents passed away, it didn't feel like there was a need to continue on with that from my mom's point of view. Um, and so if anything, I was very much spiritual. I was very much new age, the universe and manifestation, and let's be good to everybody, and crystals and tarot and all of that. And I don't think there's anything, wrong with that. Um, but I found through manifestation, whether it was through trying to get more book sales or being positive or whatever, that I was getting really burnt out and it just wasn't resonating. And then when I started changing the universe to God, it seemed to resonate more within me and it seemed to really actually start working because God was something concrete that I knew and that I could sort of surrender to versus the universe, which is just sort of this abstract concept that I didn't have this connection to really. And like I said, I think that everyone's, you know, beliefs, you can do whatever you want. I'm not here to shame or condemn you at all. This is just sort of what worked for me. And I started growing into Christ more. And to the point where like I am very respectful of Sabbath now. I think that's a different topic, but we're talking about dark romance and Christianity. But it was around this time when I realized that the dark romance readers specifically had certain expectations, and I was struggling with them because I didn't want to play the game of writing terrible, steamy scenes, trying to shock the readers, and trying to figure out, like, you know, what trying to like play into that game and have the story kind of suffer as a consequence to it. Um, and so I kind of started journaling a lot more and going deeper into, well, is dark romance even okay for me to be if I say that I'm a Christian and I'm reading the Bible and I'm exploring the different themes, can I really be a Christian and put something like that out there, you know? Um, and it was something that I definitely wrestled with. And I think that I have found a solution that works for me because, yes, of course you can be. I always tell my friends, um, you know, well, we'll get into it. I have a script. I'm kind of going off because I just want to I just wanted to touch on, where I'm coming from. But let's go into that in the first place. Like, why does this conversation even matter, right? Why should we talk about this? On top of everything, writing is deeply personal. Whether you're a believer or not, you're putting parts of your heart, your soul, your experience onto the page. But for those of us who have a very strong faith within Christianity, there can be a tug of war between our values and our art, potentially reader expectations and what serves the story based on the type of characters we're writing, and what the themes are of how we are expected to live as Christians, right? Um, when you write something like dark romance with messy characters and trauma and violence and spice, it really gets more complicated. You know, maybe you've heard it. You can't write that and be a Christian, or that doesn't honor God, or you're leading people astray. And that's something that deeply resonates with me and deeply, deeply like it scares me. Like, I don't want to do that. If this sounds familiar, I really want to unpack that with you. So there's this big myth that's kind of floating around that being a Christian means writing only maybe clean, wholesome, morally upright stories, that every story must be an altar call or a devotional in disguise. But the truth is, the Bible itself is full of darkness. If you have read it, like, I think a lot of like maybe not so much reverse harem, but harems. There are so many of them. It's full of murder, adultery, betrayal, redemption, complicated love. Like every single person that God chooses is not a great person in general. Potentially David to a degree, but like I'm thinking of Abraham, Moses, Jacob, Isaac, like all of these people have their own issues, a lot of gray, right? And complicated love stories. So to me, and again, this is all my interpretation of it, my experience with it going into the actually what scripture says, and again, not trying to listen to what people tell me scripture says. But God isn't afraid of the dark. He enters it himself. As authors, especially in romance, we're telling human stories. And guess what? People are messy. Redemption is not neat, and love is rarely simple. So here's the key. It's not what you write per se, it's why you write it. As a Christian writing dark romance, I ask myself, okay, am I glorifying trauma or am I showing the weight of it? I I'll get into that a little bit later. Am I using spice again to shock, or am I doing it as a deeper emotional arc? Does it make sense to the story? Am I creating characters who wrestle with morality, or am I excusing or even justifying evil? My stories aren't sermons, they're not supposed to be, but they do reflect themes of redemption, grace, healing, justice, and love that costs something. There's sacrifice within it. And that's deeply biblical. Your stories don't have to be sanitized in order to be sacred. So let's get deeper even more. You're going to get feedback from both sides. So again, I'm not out here advertising that I'm a Christian author. I think that that is going to change, though, because I'm trying to be more open with my faith because it has become a huge part into who I am. Having said that, I'm not trying to preach, especially in my stories. I think that we can all agree that once you start shoving theme down people's throats, it's going to, again, override the story and it's going to take the enjoyment out of the escape that we're giving them within the context of the story itself. But if you're a dark romance author, you might get some kickback from Christian readers who are going to judge you for it. And some dark romance readers might question your faith because of what you're writing. But here's what I found: the right readers are hungry for depth. They want characters who struggle, they want stories that reflect real life wounds and show a way through it. Being open about your faith, it doesn't mean that you're preaching. It means you're showing love, authenticity, and truth in a way that only you can. You don't need to compromise who you are as a believer or as a storyteller. And I found that you don't even need to put God into your stories. For me, when I'm writing, I the things that I will sort of like kind of censor now is I try not to take the Lord's name in vain. So I'll clean up a God damn it to just damn it. Instead of Jesus Christ, I'll say something like fuck or whatever, right? I've tried to be more mindful about that. But other than that, I'm not out here like putting religion into the books itself. I'm looking at themes and big themes within Christianity are redemption stories, are very much a dark situation. If you think about it, Jacob, his family sold him because he was his father's favorite, and he wound up a slave in Egypt. You had Israelites being persecuted. You have a lot of dark situations. You had a lot of um, just scenarios where, women were being given to men and, arranged marriages or forced marriages or whatever. Um, and I think that we write about this even now. And there is obviously a lot of nuance to it, but these are all themes that we see in the Bible. And if we can redeem people, if we can even redeem a relationship, a love, that's even more important. In the Bible, it literally talks about marriage being a covenant between you, your spouse, and God Himself. And that is incredibly holy and incredibly important. And so, one of the reasons I love being a dark romance author, especially with a trope like arranged marriage, is we get to see the positive in something that was forced upon us or something that maybe our characters didn't necessarily want at the beginning of it. We get to have them fall in love. We get to have them see the silver lining. And that is intensely spiritual. And whether you're a Christian or you're not, you don't have to necessarily apply that Christian theme to it, but it's a romantic theme at the end of the day. So, um, I truly believe that God gave you your stories for a reason. Maybe you're meant to reach people who would never walk into a church but will pick up your book. And that's the thing that hits me every single time I think about it or question it. When Jesus gave his sermon on Mount Sinai, I'm gonna completely butcher this, but he talks about how the healthy don't need to go see a doctor. And he was a doctor for the sick, the impoverished, the broken, the people who need someone to come and redeem them. And the way that I look at it is I have really no interest. And again, this is not criticizing or judging. I have no interest in writing Christian romance. I am not looking for those readers. Those readers are already believers. They've already picked out what they like. My job, I feel like my job is to go into the darkness, to sort of be, to talk to the readers who otherwise would never pick up a Christian romance, but might pick up my book. And so I think that that is really, really important. That is my job. Like, that is what I see as my job. And so it's to give readers hope. It's to let them hurt and be obsessed with the book and the characters and to really lean into the themes that resonate and the tropes that resonate with me. Maybe you're helping a reader heal from something that they can't even say out loud. Maybe you're not writing despite your faith. Maybe you're writing because of it. You can create compelling, addictive, trope-heavy, morally gray fiction and still walk closely with God. Let your work reflect your wrestle, right? Like let your characters search for light in the dark. That is incredibly powerful. And that's what I truly believe as a Christian who writes dark romance. Now, I'm not going to get dark just to get dark. I'm not going to write scenes or scenarios or characters for that shock value or to give my readers, a tool that they can utilize to stimulate them. My job is to tell these really in-depth, nuanced stories that, are probably not going to be as popular as some of the more popular dark romance. And that's okay. I've come to terms with that because at the end of the day, I'm much more satisfied writing what I love than I am forcing myself to write something that I do not resonate with. And that's not a shot at right to market. That's not a shot at anything, because if that is something that you love to do, more to like more power to you. I know I can't provide that for those readers, and if you can, do it. It's like, you know, Taylor Swift, right? And wish list. Like, I hope the readers get what they want. They deserve what they want. But I just want, my stories. And it's okay if it's, again, they're not as popular. But um, again, this was something that I had struggled with. And I came to the conclusion of, you know, God, I have to meet my readers in that darkness and slowly take them to the light. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to find Christ. It might not happen, but I am going to be much more satisfied with the stories that I create because I have found Christ and I have really gotten in deep with my relationship with Him and how that helps me with my writing. So that's what I wanted to sort of tell you. So if you are a Christian who writes dark romance, this is my encouragement to you. First of all, you're not alone. I think there are more of us than actually we really think, but no one really talks about it. Um, and that's sad because I think that especially now, religion is important, at least in my view. And again, you're more than welcome to disagree with me. But you are not alone, and you are not wrong, and you are not disqualified from your calling. Write the stories that only you can write. That's it. If this resonated with you, I would love to hear your story. Drop a comment below. Are you a Christian writer navigating the tension? What helps you stay grounded while writing pretty emotional fiction? And please, if you're called to it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with another writer who needs to hear it. But just a reminder, your stories matter. Keep writing. So thanks for hanging out with me. That was a lot for me. But I don't know. I hope it resonated, and I look forward to hanging out with you again soon. All right, take care.